Coming up on Cronkite Sports Live, Demarius Randall became a very rich man yesterday after being drafted in the first round of the NFL Draft.
ASU Golf clinches the Territorial Cup for the Sun Devils. Baseball then dropped a midweek contest and, well, dropped in the rankings as well.
And we got a water polo top play that you do not want to miss. All that and more coming up on Cronkite Sports Live. Welcome into Cronkite Sports Live. I'm Mauricio Casillas, he's Jake Garcia, and we've got our last show on deck for everyone today.
That's right. Baseball enters its most grinding portion of its schedule. Softball continues to limp along, and Heroes of the Dorm had Sun Devil Nation captivated and plugged into ESPN2.
Before we get to that, Jake, let's talk about what was on ESPN just last night, the NFL Draft. The first round of the draft was nearly 4 hours long, and it was not until the waning moments of the draft that a Sun Devil heard his name called. Safety Demarius Randall was drafted by the Green Bay Packers with the 30th overall pick. This made him the first Sun Devil to go in the first round since Terrell Suggs did it back in 2003. Surprisingly, though, most people thought that wide receiver Jalen Strong would be the first Arizona State player to be plucked from college and put into the NFL. Now, for more on that, we bring in WCSN football expert Carrie Crowley. Now, Carrie, one of the most interesting things that I thought was the fact that Demarius Randall 2 months ago was not very high on anybody's draft boards. But yesterday we saw it. He was drafted in the first round. What did teams and scouts like about Demarius Randall's game?
Well, it's interesting, Mauricio. Back in November when the Sun Devils were still playing football, I talked with Demarius Randall, and his plan was to go forward and seek a 6th year of eligibility from the NCAA. Ultimately, he finishes the season and decides he talked with a few NFL teams and said, hey, maybe I can get something out of this NFL draft. Maybe I can be a mid-round pick. And then all of a sudden, he displays his versatility and in so many different ways. Todd Graham's defensive scheme helped Randall in enormous ways leading up to the NFL draft. Randall played a lot of cover 1 and cover 0, which means he was lined up against slot receivers playing man coverage when the Sun Devils would go with those all-out blitzes. And what that does is it made him a more versatile prospect because he can play that nickel corner position in the NFL, which is really where he projects to. So you look at him in college, he played both corner and safety, even though he was listed primarily as a free safety. At the NFL, it's kind of a weak defensive back class, especially at the safety position. The Packers are looking at the 30th pick. They think they need a defensive back. They add Demarius Randall, and instantly his value soars up.
Now, Demarius Randall, certainly a really versatile defender, and another versatile defender, as I mentioned earlier, Terrell Suggs, which was the last Sun Devil to be drafted in the first round of the NFL Draft. Carrie, what does this do for this Sun Devil football program, the fact that they now have a first-round draft pick, their first one since 12 years ago?
Well, it was very significant for Arizona State because Demarius Randall went the junior college route, and ASU was always trying to sell junior college players on this program. But I will say it's not as significant as it would have been should Jalen Strong have been taken in the first round, because Arizona State has already proven it can recruit at an elite level on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, the Sun Devils waited until after National Signing Day to pick up 2 wide receivers, Devin Lucien, one of them, Tim White, another, a junior college guy. They're still looking for that elite wide receiver who can really make this offense go. And if they had Jalen Strong to set the precedent and say, we can take you, mold you into first-round product, and make you an NFL player, then that says a lot to recruits. But still, Demarius Randall proving the junior college route can still be a way to go through Arizona State.
Yeah, Carrie, it'll be interesting to see where Jalen Strong ends up in the second round of the NFL Draft. That's coming up in less than 30 minutes. But Carrie Crowley with the latest on Sun Devil football and the NFL Draft.
The ASU baseball team dropped Wednesday's midweek contest against the Arizona Wildcats as 7 ASU pitchers were blasted to the tune of 17 runs and 20 hits from U of A. Beautifully underscoring the culture of midweek games, 4 of the ASU pitchers were freshmen, and combined they gave up a total of 13 runs in 3.2 innings for a paltry ERA of 37. And now I welcome in Dominic Cotroneo to discuss some more of this ASU baseball team like we have time and time again this season. Dominic, Tracy Smith continues to reiterate his team not yet playing at its peak. They still have better baseball left to be played. I'd venture to say, though, that given their remaining schedule, this is the time in which they really need to showcase that.
Absolutely. And everyone's had UCLA circled on their calendar since the start of the year, but this Cal weekend can really be a trap one if you really go underwhelming into it. You look at the rest of the Pac-12 standings, though, you still see UCLA on the top there with their great conference mark. This weekend, they actually have a break in their conference play. They take on the Gonzaga Bulldogs, a team that the Sun Devils beat back in the Phoenix Community Classic. But look at ASU's remaining schedule. Yes, they're in a good spot there in the 2-hole, but tied in the win column with those Golden Bears just below them, who they take on this weekend, of course. But UCLA next weekend at home, Wazoo to close out the home stretch for ASU, and then go to Dedeaux Field and USC, the Trojans, 11-7, that's a really deceiving mark because they've faced some really good teams that have faced ASU as well. Also, they defeat the defended national champions Vanderbilt. They beat TCU. They also beat UCLA in an earlier tournament, all at Dodger Stadium as well. So this weekend is going to be big, but the last 4 weekends are going to be huge for ASU if they want to get back into the Super Regional chat.
So zooming in now to this 3-game set against Cal, at Cal specifically, it's a series, like you said, that could be a trap series for the Sun Devils. Cal, a surprise team. Many experts did not pick them in the upper half of the Pac-12. And so I'll ask you now, how do you see this series shaping out from a stat-by-stat standpoint?
Well, you look at it overall, these are two really balanced teams. They're very equal. They have pretty good offenses, but Cal has the upper hand in pitching. You see the great runs allowed. It's the only stat they really have a big advantage in over a run, really, at the entire per game. Their great weekend rotation. They're going to see Ryan Mason on Saturday night. The Sun Devils are. He just shut out those Wildcats that put 17 runs on them. He put them 4-0 last weekend in Tucson. So Mason's going to be tough to beat against Kellogg on Saturday night. Everyone knows about Dalton Jeffries and his 6 wins, but here's some perspective. They have pitched over 180 innings as starters this year. They have only walked 35 batters. And then to complement that, they have Lucas Erceg, one of the best Pac-12 power hitters with 9 homers this season. That's only second to who else in Bobby Dahlbeck.
Bobby Dahlbeck, a guy who's terrorized ASU's pitching so far this season. And we've covered Arizona State now extensively. The only thing left is now a prediction. So, Dom, give me your prediction. All 3 games this series against Cal, how does that shape up?
Well, everyone knows about ASU's one-run games and how it's been so close. 14-5 in those one-run games. Well, you look at Cal, they're 5-2 in one-run games. I expect nothing different this weekend. At least 2 one-run games, but ASU, I think they can and should, quite frankly, take this series this weekend.
Game 1 starts at 7 p.m. tonight on the Pac-12 networks. It'll be Seth Martinez opposed by Dalton Jeffries for Cal. Dominic Cotroneo, beautiful as always. Mal, now back to you.
Though he hasn't coached a game yet for Arizona State, men's basketball coach Bobby Hurley has already made an impact on the program. According to a report from CBS college basketball reporter Jonathan Rothstein, ASU has scheduled a home-and-home series with Creighton. The Sun Devils will play Creighton on December 2nd and then host them at some point during the 2016-17 campaign. The team will also face off against St. John's on December 22nd next season. This will pit 2 legendary point guards turned coaches against one another, Hurley for ASU and Chris Mullen for St. John's.
Now, Mal, it was a huge week in Arizona State athletics.
Absolutely, a lot going on.
And so I'd venture to say that this next segment has the potential to be extremely electric. Jake Gaydon joins us now for Tweets of the Week. And Jake, I have no idea how you possibly boiled this down to only 3 tweets.
It definitely took more than a couple hours. This weekend, though, has been deemed the mega weekend for sports coverage around the world. The Kentucky Derby, NFL Draft, Mayweather, Pacquiao, NBA, and NHL playoffs. The list could go on and on. With all these monumental events going on, one may ask, how will this affect social media? Could it cause it to crash like the ASU servers on finals week? Or could it share some of the most historical information in sports history? They said it. We picked it. This is ASU Athletes Tweets of the Week. Let's get it rolling. First one is from our guy, Tracy Smith, Heroes on the Diamond. I, Raynor, will attempt to avenge my ASU brothers when we embark upon our journey to Cal next weekend. Long live the heroes of the storm.
This is incredibly creative from Tracy Smith, because not only did ASU suffer in heartbreaking fashion to Cal in Heroes of the Dorm, but now ASU goes to Cal this weekend to take them on in baseball. It'll be interesting to see on Twitter whether or not people value these same things in a similar fashion. Are people going to care more about Pac-12 baseball or Heroes of the Dorm?
I don't know, man. I like the name Raynor. Coach Raynor is much better than Coach Tracy Smith, if you ask me. But no, Coach Smith, we see this all the time from him. He does this all the time. When U of A lit up ASU earlier this week, he even said that the Bat Boy went like 3 for 4 and 4 RBI. So this is just like something that he does all the time.
Hey, Raynor, Coach Smith, possibly the same person. You never know. He could be a Heroes of the Dorm type of guy. You never know. Second tweet though, Ben, if you mind throwing that up for us. Second one is log off from our boy Ryan Kellogg, the lefty Canadian hurler. Insert tweet complaining about Blackboard is down and you can't do your homework. I had this problem, guys. I had finals this week. Did you?
You know what, Jake? This affected me even today. I was trying to turn in one of my projects, and you know what? My ASU was down. I was really upset, really stressed out, but my professor, she got the email update. She said it was okay. It wasn't too bad, but for a second there, I was a little worried.
I think we're all aboard the train of taking online classes here at ASU. Well, don't do it anymore because once Blackboard goes down, you can't possibly access it. I'm all about taking classes in person.
You were almost academically ineligible for this show.
Is that right?
Yes, yes, yes.
It's because I couldn't log on to take my courses on Blackboard.
It happens.
Well, Michael Crow wants us to be this new American university. I think the first thing to start is definitely with the internet and Blackboard. But roll up the third tweet, Ben, if you don't mind. Last one, Money Manziel, Manny Burko? Michael Bercovici, the Arizona State starting quarterback. I hate to admit it, but I think I'm Team Pacquiao. Guys, I'm Team Mayweather. They just weighed in. 45 for Pacquiao, 46 for Mayweather. This is going to be a good fight this weekend. I wonder how these ASU sports fans are picking who's the winner this weekend.
Well, I can promise you this much, and it's that Mike Bercovici got some massive love on that tweet. Whenever this guy manages to tweet about some sort of national affairs, people just cling on to it and retweet it at an unprecedented rate. I'm glad he's rooting for Pacquiao, though we all should be.
Burko, likable guy. Manny Pacquiao, likable guy. It just makes sense. I like the fact that Burko, even though he was afraid to admit it, stuck to his guns and said to the whole world, proclaimed, hey, I'm Team Pacquiao.
Hey, Pacquiao underdog, Burko underdog. I can see possibly why they pick each other, but that's all I got, gentlemen. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jake. We'll now voyage on over to the ASU track and field department, and while it might not have the same enticing allure as a social media segment, the events that will be transpiring at Sun Angel Stadium today and tomorrow are well worth your time. The track and field team wraps up its home meet competition this weekend, taking on U of A for another showdown of the Duel in the Desert. ASU already won the Territorial Cup, so this meet won't have any bearing on the final standings, but it will be time best served for paying homage to the massive contributions from these teams. In fact, 4 of ASU's 10.5 points are a result of the dominance of the track and field and cross-country programs. They swept U of A at the Pac-12 cross-country championships in the fall, and then once again at the indoor track and field championships in March, and now this weekend, they'll look to make it a perfect 3-for-3.
Joining me now at the desk is WCSN lacrosse expert Troy Lynch. A big weekend coming up for ASU lacrosse. They're facing off against Chapman in the SLC semifinals. But before we break that matchup down, I want to talk about ASU and its first round game of the SLC tournament against UCSB. Even though they won, it definitely seemed like Coach Stone was not pleased with his team's performance.
No, and he should not be either. I mean, giving up 8 points against a team that's not even ranked, that's unacceptable. Coach Stone even made his team run after the game, even after winning by 6 goals. But going into this game, it was extremely hyped. It was supposed to be a statement game for ASU, but that just did not happen. ASU, they really need to step up big time against Chapman tonight. If they play as bad as they did against UCSB, they're not going to win tonight.
Now, Troy, take me through this matchup. It's number 2 Chapman against number 3 ASU. It's kind of tough to figure out who's the favorite in this. Chapman is at home. If you had to give the edge to any team, who would it be?
Well, the favorite has to be Chapman right now just because they score more goals, they're at home, and they're number 2, and ASU is number 3. But if you look at Chapman's what their schedule this season, it's been pretty easy. I mean, they did lose to Concordia, which is a Division II school. They lost at U of A and Colorado State, 2 teams that ASU actually beat. So at ASU, their schedule is much tougher. The SLC South is the most competitive conference in the MCLA, and they only lost once in the conference. So I give my favorite to ASU tonight, but very slightly.
Now that game, 7:30 tonight, big implications. It's at Chapman in Orange, California. Now, Troy, if you had to pick some keys to the game for Arizona State, what are they going to have to do to come out on top?
Well, Dan Davis really needs to show up tonight. He only has 2 goals in the last 2 games. If they want to win, he's going to have to put up at least 3 or 4. They can't keep relying on Finn Wells and Cooper Piquel to be so offensively productive, but tonight it's going to be about defense. If you look at the defensive starters for ASU, they shouldn't be as good as they have been this season. They just lack experience, and they're going to have to be solid. They're going to have to make up stops, pick up some ground balls, or else they're not going to win. But ASU, I see them winning, going to the SLC championships.
Again, Troy, that game at 7:30 tonight. Big national tournament implications as well. But there you have it, Troy Lynch with the latest on the SLC tournament.
Just like ASU baseball, ASU softball is gearing up for the home stretch of its 2015 season. The team has 6 more games left on its schedule, and this weekend concludes its road slate when it travels to the Bay Area to take on Stanford, a team that's just 1-17 in conference play. Checking in at number 24 in the coaches poll, the Sun Devils continue to extend one of the most impressive streaks in college softball, a streak that spans 153 straight weeks in which they've been ranked in the top 25. And even though this season has been the ultimate assault on that streak, the team looks poised to extend it to 154 if it can take care of business against the Cardinal. Now I welcome in Elaine Wilson to discuss some more about this ASU softball team. I'd say that largely at this point, this team isn't really caring about extending that streak. They're just worried about playing their best softball come tournament time, and frankly, they're not. Losers of 6 of their last 9 games, they're either at the tip of the iceberg of not hosting a regional, or as you think, they've played themselves out of hosting one.
Absolutely. I mean, they're going to face an easy team this weekend with Stanford, and they should be able to pull out that win. But when it comes to their last series of the season, it's going to be against number 7 UCLA, and that's a really tough series for them. When it comes to the actual regional competition, though, the bracket's a little confusing. The way it works is that there's 32 teams that get an automatic bid. Only 16 of those are seeded. Everybody else is going to be unranked, and there's 32 at-large teams. So the seeded teams host the regional. The point of this is to make it so those seeded teams eventually face each other in the super regional, not pictured as a losing bracket at the bottom, again with more ranked teams. ASU doesn't really have a chance to get in those seedings. I see them being one of those unranked teams listed on the left, but because of that, they're not very likely to make it very far in this regional competition.
This tournament, though, is a double elimination tournament, and so a team can lose up to 4 times and still be crowned national championships. We'll take a look at the Pac-12 now. Similar to how we did with women's basketball, it's hard to project all 64 teams, but we can look at the Pac-12 and how things are shaping up there. So who are the teams in the Pac-12 that stand out and really are making a case to host a regional?
It's definitely about the top half of the Pac-12. If you can see with the rankings how it works, Oregon is already sitting at that number 2 spot in the nation. UCLA, as mentioned earlier, at number 7. Arizona sitting at number 16, so they're just on the cusp of possibly being in that top seeding teams. Utah not ranked, they're probably going to be an at-large team. Washington and Arizona State, though ranked, will also probably be at large. So again, that upper half of the Pac-12 going into these last 2 series of the season is going to be very important when it comes to the rankings. It's hard to predict now, like you said, 64 teams in this whole thing. So we're just going to have to see how it plays out with these last 2 weekends of the games.
So we talked ASU softball, we talked national softball as well. The Sun Devils have 6 games left, 3 this weekend against Stanford, followed by 3 more at home against UCLA. Thanks, Elaine. Perfect as always. Now, Mao, back to you.
After a successful season on the pitch, ASU men's golf coach Tim Mickelson was named Pac-12 Coach of the Year. Mickelson led the team to 5 tournament wins, a first in over 10 years. Golfers John Rahm and Max Rotliff were also named first team Pac-12 in their tournament. In their tournament, the Arizona State men's golf team quietly clinched a big win over U of A, and they didn't even realize it. The team finished 3rd in the Pac-12 championships, and U of A finished 9th, which gave ASU the 2015 Territorial Cup Series win. Individually, though, you see Brock Johnson finished 5th overall, and then top-ranked world amateur John Rahm finished tied for 6th. The NCAA will announce its regional selections on Monday.
Jake Gayden has already appeared once on this show, and now he will make his 2nd appearance of the day. Call him Bo Jackson in his multi-sport endeavors. Here's Jake with the weekend forecast.
Thanks, Jake. Always love making an appearance on CSL, especially the last one of the semester. Let's dive right into the weekend forecast. Starting with our boys of summer, they're going to be up in Berkeley to face the Golden Bears in a 3-game series. That's going to be a good one. I was talking to WCSN baseball analyst Dom Catronio, who say this might be the biggest road win for the Devils, going to be some good pitching matchups as well. Jeffries versus Martinez, Mason versus Kellogg, and Ledrich versus Lick. Overall, a great series. And the softball is going to be headed to Stanford right here, as you can see. The Stanford Cardinal, who only have 1 conference win on the year. This is a must-win series if you're the Devils, if they want to make a push deep into the playoffs. According to WCSN softball analyst Elaine Wilson, they really have to make this push. And then finally, track and field has a busy weekend. Let's start it off down in Tempe, where they'll play in the Duel in the Desert versus U of A at Sun Angel Stadium on Friday. And then on Saturday, going to head back to Stanford, where the softball team is playing, and play in the Peyton Invitational. A very busy weekend for the boys and girls in running shoes. Well, that does it for this weekend's forecast, but we thought because we love our Sun Devils so much here at CSL, we thought, why don't we show our viewers what this summer looks like for ASU sports? So Ben, if you may, let's pull up the May calendar. And you can see baseball is going to have a big series against UCLA this weekend. Friday, Saturday, and then as you can see over here, Sunday. It's a 1 versus 2 Pac-12 matchup. It's definitely going to be something you're going to want to see after finals. Then the week after, May 16th, track and field have their Pac-12 championships in Los Angeles. Could shape up to be some major hardware given up to some Sun Devils. As well, the NCAA regionals for softball going to be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Again, talked with WCSN softball analyst Elaine Wilson. She said she doesn't expect ASU to make it out of the weekend, but if they do, their super regional, as you can see, is the weekend after with women's golf on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Women's golf is going to be all weekend long down in Florida. Then to close out May, ASU baseball has their regionals most on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Most likely going to be a Phoenix Muni the weekend of the 29th. Golf also starts their NCAA championships in Florida just for a week, just like that. And ASU softball, if they make it that far, they will play in the Women's College World Series in Oklahoma. You never know with the ASU softball team. They're deadly in the playoffs. Now, Ben, if you could flip to, you already did it for me, month of June. Super regionals are going on for baseball, and WCSN analyst for baseball, Dom Cotrone, said baseball will be back at the College World Series in Omaha. Have to agree with him on that. Great chance of possibly winning the whole thing this year. You never know with ASU baseball. Nothing going on in July. Then you head back to August. When we come back to school, Camp T is going to happen August 11th throughout the whole entire week. Their usual thing they do. This is going to be, I believe, their second year in a row, or fourth year in a row doing it. No, second year. Wrong with that. It's going to be a great weekend, and it's a great weekend to come back to school and really starts off the year. That's all I got, though, guys. Let's send it back to the guys at the desk and wrap this puppy up.
Thanks, Jake. I got my summer planner filled to the brim now. But now it's time for the segment that would make Walter Cronkite himself proud. The way it is. You know the drill. We bounce a series of questions off one another, and then our producer decides the winner. If you're all keeping track at home, I'm leading 2-1. But let's get started, Jake.
The guy who wins is ultimately the guy with the last word, though, so I'll do my best today. I'll start things off with arguably the biggest news from that last night, and it was that Jalen Strong was not selected in the first round of the NFL draft. The Eagles and Chip Kelly passed him, took Nelson Aguilar instead. The Pats, he could have looked good in a Pats jersey. They passed on him as well. How surprised are you that Strong didn't go in the first round?
You know what, Jake? I'm a little bit surprised. I was thinking Jalen Strong would probably go 20 to 30 range, but then you saw it happen. Philly didn't take him. Then the Ravens didn't take him either. They opted for another wide receiver. And then New England at pick 32, you saw Malcolm Brown was available. You kind of knew at that point that Jalen Strong wasn't going to go in the first round, but I'm interested to see where he ends up in the second round. Now, Jake, ASU baseball is pretty much a lock to host a regional, but when it comes to a super regional, that's where it gets a little bit dicey. Do you think they finish the season strong enough to be hosting a super regional come June?
I don't, and you saw it when Dom mentioned their strength of schedule. The toughest part is yet to come, and I sung their praises when I called them situationally excellent. The problem is they haven't been extending leads when they should be and when they could be as well. This is where their run differential finally catches up to them. They host a regional, but they won't host a super regional. And now to something that we can't argue about what it hosted, because Twitter definitely hosted the most transcendental moment in ASU sports history. Arguably, or as we'll say, you'll see here, Arizona State's premier esports team took on Cal in what was dubbed the Heroes of the Dorm. ASU lost in heartbreaking fashion. Twitter went nuts, and then that ESPN2 was televising it in the first place. So I want your opinion now, sport or not a sport, and should ESPN2 be investing time in this?
Jake, this is absolutely a sport, and I don't even live in the dorms anymore, but these guys were my heroes. I say this because, Jake, it's competitive and people can get better at this. You can see that they were getting extremely into it, Jake. Now, ESPN2, come on, give me some slack. They show the World Series of Poker. Those guys don't even know what they're planning on ESPN2. Of course it should be on ESPN2, and I think we take it a step further. I think, Ray Anderson, if you're watching this, you make our Heroes of the Dorm team a Division I team, but you also have to test for PEDs. You never know what these guys could be taking.
It's a legendary response.
Now, Jake, switching gears a little bit, the men's golf team finished third in the Pac-12 championships. U of A finished ninth, which means that the golf team actually clinched the Territorial Cup Series, the 2015 one, for ASU. Now, there's a lot of big wins that allowed this to happen, but Jake, if you had to pick one, which is the biggest one?
Well, it's the easiest choice, but it's not the most obvious choice, and that's ASU basketball splitting the two-game series against U of A this season. For the second straight year, they upset the Wildcats, a team that would make it to the Elite Eight in the NCAA tournament. This all goes back to the point of, can you have a successful season without winning a championship? ASU basketball didn't do either, but since they beat U of A, that's their championship. And so, yes, they had a successful season. That was the biggest win in this Territorial Cup matchup. And now, perfect seg to the next question. question now. ASU point guard Chance Murray has announced that he will be transferring from Arizona State, no longer enrolled at ASU. What's the immediate impact that it'll have on this basketball team?
Jake, I think it does have an impact in terms of this basketball team's depth at point guard. Trey Holder definitely emerged as the starting point guard, the go-to guy, the floor general for Arizona State. And Cody Justice, before he got hurt, was actually a really good backup for him there, a nice change of play guy. If those two guys stay healthy, I don't think that Chance Murray transferring really does much for Arizona State. But you can't really blame Murray. Some games he wouldn't play at all, other games he'd be playing in crunch time. It was hard for him to figure out where he fit in Herb Sendek's offense, and it would have been hard for him to figure out where he would have fit in Bobby Hurley's offense as well. So you can't really blame him there. Now, lastly, Jake, we touched on this last Friday. Ray Anderson made another big-time hire. He hired Bob Bowman as the new swim coach for ASU. Now, if you don't know Bob Bowman, he coached a guy by the name of Michael Phelps, a pretty famous Olympian. Now, Ray Anderson has hired a bevy of people in his tenure, but is this the most impressive hire for Ray Anderson?
I think Zeke Jones is the only guy with a comparable resume. Both of them have coached Team USA teams, but the mentorship that Bob Bowman has of Michael Phelps pushes him over the top. By far the biggest hire that Ray Anderson's had. This is pretty much like when Michigan got Harbaugh.
Wow, bold stuff. All right, end of the year, time to find out.
Our survey says, who took this home?
Oh, there we go. Let's go.
They're not listening to the responses at this point.
They're absolutely listening to the responses. Honestly, I can't think of a better way to close out the year than with a win over Jake. But let's get to it, guys. Last night was supposed to be Jalen Strong's night. The night he was supposed to prove everyone wrong, from a JUCO player with bad grades to a first-round wide receiver. But last night didn't work out that way. Jalen Strong, once again, has to prove everyone wrong. It's surprising, really, that Strong is still on the board. He was an absolute force to be reckoned with in college. If ASU needed a first down, you absolutely knew that offensive coordinator Mike Norvell would dial up a back-shoulder throw to Strong. You just knew. But for some reason, as the draft went along, you didn't know. You had no idea where Strong would end up, but it was almost a consensus that Strong would go in the second half of the first round. Strong himself was in the draft room waiting patiently for his name to be called. Instead, at the end of it all, Malcolm Brown was the 32nd overall pick, and Jalen Strong is still just a former ASU wide receiver. I'm flabbergasted that such a tremendous talent was not picked up. But if we know one thing about Strong, it's that he works best when people don't believe in him. And that's the way it is.
Man, that really got me choked up just now.
Hopefully that helps you. I mean, hopefully you work better when people don't believe in you, Jake.
Well, I don't work best when I'm choked up, and so to counter that, let's get amped. It's the final top plays of the semester.
Let's do it, baby. Number 3, we're leading with water polo. We teased it earlier. This is Kayla Cassis in the game against San Jose State. They're tied at 5-5 in the third. She gets the steal, and then she goes coast to coast all the way, slots it in for the goal. There you see it right there. ASU gets the 6-5 lead. We'll take another look at it right there. You saw the journey to the back of the net.
RJ Ibarra was in a 3 for 25, a painful slump at the plate. His response, every day, every hour, turned the pain into power. 2-run shot for the big fella, but a heartbreaking loss for ASU in this game. More from the Diamond coming up right now.
Last play of the semester, top play of the semester, and a good one here. ASU U of A baseball. Jordan Boites with a nice backhanded behind the back snag. Look at this out. Gets it, and then throws the runner out at first. Cool, calm, and collected Jordan Boites.
Great final top play for the final show of the semester. Wow. And now as we close out the show, give me some departing final thoughts as we head into the summer.
Yeah, no, Jake, it was a great semester for ASU athletics, and that always makes our lives easier when we have good competitive teams to cover, especially on our end. It's just nice having a team that you can look at and having good highlights to get from there. But on our end as well, we had great producers, a great crew, great talent, all working together. And Fridays, especially in the mornings, are extremely hectic, but it ends up becoming the most fun you can have during the week.
I completely agree with you, and thanks so much for joining us all semester, all year long on Cronkite Sports Live. We've enjoyed every second of it. We'll be back at it next semester after the lengthy summer, heals all the wounds that we may have acquired throughout the year. For everyone here at CSL and the Walter Cronkite Sports Network, my partner and president, Mauricio Casillas, I'm Jake Garcia, saying so long from Phoenix, Arizona.
Have a good